So also allow people time to, ask questions and stuff like that. So hopefully it can be somewhat interactive. Let me dive in and I'm going to show my screen and start the slide presentation. Here we go. Okay, so this is, as I say, these are the slides I used at Engage. I have simplified them a little bit, taken some out, but I'll just go through them quickly. What is traditional at Engage is you introduce yourself. So I'm John Mathewson, and I was born in Canada, and I lived for quite a few years in South Africa and lived in several different areas of the US. And since everyone was talking about it, I started working with FileMaker in FileMaker 3 in about 1996, as I recall. And my hobbies are, I'm really passionate about electronics. And what's interesting there, I think relative to what we're talking about, is that I developed several pieces of electronic equipment that were controlled by microprocessors. So it's really kind of interesting where you are, you're doing the code, but you're also writing the electronic files and the circuitry. And it was my first endeavor to actually design electronic circuits. And so I just learned one thing from that, is that precision was really important, and two things. And the other one was that when you're debugging and you don't know whether it's the electronics that are not working or the software that's not working, it's an exciting little event. I burned many hours working on that, but I learned a lot by doing it. I founded KyoLogic in 2002. Tim Newdecker was with me for many years, and then he left to go to MC Services. So I've been leading KyoLogic since then. A little bit about us. We have 8, now 9, thanks to Tad joining us. We're established in 2002. We've done over 300 successful projects with all sorts of really pretty A-list companies, which is really quite important because it's taught us a lot. When you're dealing with first-rate clients, you learn a tremendous amount from them and hopefully share a lot of information that's valuable to them as well. We've been certified since I can remember, even before the current certification. I think it was called the proficiency exam. And we've had several things that we've released over the years. I originally released a pivoting dashboard that was using kind of data warehousing and some kind of advanced SQL and pivoting techniques. So they included graphing. And it was a pretty well-attended webinar. And I think it's been downloaded like 300 or 400 times over the years since I presented that. And then more recently, Justin did a signature add-on that also has been downloaded several hundred times and been a success. And now what we're doing is we're releasing KyoSync 2, which we haven't put on the marketplace yet, but we're going to be shortly. And part of our goal with KyoSync is to introduce a bit of a, we are charging for it, it's kind of nominal charge really. And but we are really looking forward to getting it into more hands. We've been using it internally with our clients. After Engage, actually, we've sold several copies to different third parties, and that's kind of exciting. But one of the things we're hoping to do is really get feedback, and learn more and make the product better. The topic of syncing is an interesting one, and I'd like to sort of get into some of the stuff that is fairly valuable and talk about some of the challenges. One of the things that is absolutely true, compared to anything else I've worked on programmatically, apart from maybe those microprocessors that I was using in electronics, is that this is so much about precision. Any small imprecisions in the synchronizing of data shows up as data errors, right? The stuff doesn't show up correctly. It doesn't update when you expect it to. And there's a lot of moving pieces. So we've learned through really hard knocks and a lot of kind of sticking with it to make sure that things work accurately and that the sometimes complex situations are resolved successfully. The main thing that you have to get used to when you're doing syncing is that the systems are separated, right? We're using the FileMaker API, so we're talking FileMaker to FileMaker sync. We're using the API, and that means that the things that are syncing with each other never touch each other. They're not in any way connected. There's no relationships. There's nothing. It's purely sending and receiving information through the data API connection. And so what we came up with was the concept that we're really talking about a network community. So if we're talking about kind of a FileMaker network, we're used to being connected to a server, right? So we open up the app, we connect to the server, and there's our app, and we are very closely connected to the server on a real-time basis. But when you're in a network community, you have that same transfer of information, but it's not real time. You're separated in time and you're separated in space. You're really in different worlds. And so some complexities and responsibilities come from that. One of the most important things is that you have to have a unique identity. And there's really three components of that. The first one is how are you connecting? The second one is what is your device ID? And the third is what is your user ID? And those three things make up uniqueness. And so that's stuff that's all automated into the software that we've developed. The other thing that's really important is to do universal timestamping. So the UTC, which was introduced several versions ago in FileMaker, I mean, quite a few versions now, is really useful because it means that everyone's using the same timestamps no matter where they are in terms of different time zones around the world. One of the things that we have stressed especially in KyoSync 2, which I'll talk about, is very transactional kinds of processing. We send blocks of information and process blocks of information. We're not sending individual records one by one. However, that is not true for containers. For containers, you don't have a choice. The method for sending containers is on a record-by-record basis. So the syncing of the container component of a system is different than it is for the rest of the data. And then the main thing that you learn very quickly is that there are just thousands of events going on. Even just one sync has just got many, many moving pieces. And I thought it'd be fun. We were coming up with a strategy for conflict resolution, and the diagram in front of you is literally the logic path to resolve just one thing. And there's hundreds of those in something like KyoSync. So there's a lot of this figuring out what happens when does it happen, and just to ensure that uniqueness and correctness of time stamping is maintained. And there are quite a few challenges that come with that complexity. So we've been at syncing for a long time, actually. The first sync that I wrote was kind of in 2003, I think, something around there. We wrote an XML and .NET synchronization tool. Christian's familiar with that. He helped me work on it. And it was using ODBC, and it's synchronizing large numbers of records from FileMaker to a middleware engine, and then through ODBC up to a website. And that was used by one of our clients and has synced over 25 million records over the years. So very, very high volume. Synchronization requirements pretty primitive. That led then to DynaSync, which was something that came out of the work of Catherine Russell out of Nightwing Enterprises. And that was where it was kind of a cool idea. You had your remote app and you had your host, your server. And then what you'd do is on the remote app in a container, you'd actually have the connection device, which itself would be a FileMaker file. And you would export the file and launch it, and it would contain the connections on both the client and server side. And so while that was launched, you actually were connected to the server. So unlike API sync, which we're doing now, there was a period when you actually are connected to the server and can compare data. The only problem with that, I mean, it worked pretty well, and we actually have a client still using one. And actually, that's how I met Derek, was that I built a system like that for them for Mass General Hospital. And it also was a little clunky because, you know, you were always saving a FileMaker file and then having to delete it. And back in those days, there wasn't even a tool to delete it, so you had to write stuff over it to delete it. It was just a little clunky, but it worked. And as I say, still in functioning with one of our clients. That when the API came out, the FileMaker REST API came out, I became fascinated. And I said, this has got to be a great tool for doing FileMaker to FileMaker syncing. And I developed a tool called Ramble On, and I actually joked about this group in the Engage presentation because I said you guys were kind of my guinea pigs. And I think I bored the heck out of a lot of you with many versions of Ramble On, learning how to use the API to sync data from between a client and a host server. That led to the development of KyoSync 1, which has been implemented with several different clients. And it really worked very well. I mean, it worked as well as KyoSync 2. The difference is that it was really tough to implement. It was very, very time consuming, very laborious steps to set up objects and relationships and all sorts of stuff. And we actually were at a presentation talking about more transactional processing, you know, and obviously the work that Geist and people like that have done. And part of that gave me a brainwave. I said, boy, if I used more of a transactional approach, I could greatly simplify the entire requirements of implementing KyoSync. And so I moved in that direction, and the transactional model really paid off. It reduced the, you know, from several days to several hours, you know, literally that kind of a transition. And it also made the process more reliable and much easier to debug. So overall, a really big improvement. The thing that I talked about in the I see that I've got a notification up there. I don't know if I can get to it. I can't. I don't know if you guys are seeing it. It's asking me if I want to be recorded. But the thing that I raised is that I think we underestimate the power of FileMaker sometimes, or more not underestimate it, but take it for granted. There are very few applications today, and I know everyone wants to be, you know, a cloud application and SaaS, et cetera. But, you know, the fact that we've got data, code, and presentation level, like all within a individual application, is incredibly useful for something like a sync environment. And, you know, the fact that that can be done on an iPhone, on an iPad, on a remote laptop is really incredibly valuable. The implementation also more recently of card windows and add-on technology have allowed us to be able to take KyoSync and implement it in a far more fluid way than we used to be able to do it, and has led to that ease of integration that I talked about. And then the fact that we've got an entirely functional REST API and transactional JSON model built right into like an iPad starts to open up the avenue of how you can start to use a FileMaker sync. And one of the things we've learned is there are actually quite a few areas where it can be used. The first area that we started working on was working on remote technical work, such as engineering teams. Not uncommon that people go into work environments where they may be doing technical support, such as going in to check on equipment, et cetera. And they need to take photographs. They need to capture barcodes. There's all sorts of stuff you need to do. And you're in an environment where you don't have good Wi-Fi connectivity. So what they do is they go in with the iPad, they do all this sort of work, and then they sync it, and it works extremely well. And there's, you know, we have several companies that do that, and they have technical teams that are just working, you know, 24/7, you know, all year long, and we never hear from them. They're just out there syncing away. Once these things get put in place, they just work. They take a little while to get them going right, but once they're going, they work really well. An area we have not actually worked in, but there was a tremendous amount of interest at Engage, was disaster relief, you know, because obviously in a situation where a hurricane, for example, is blown through, you know, often cell towers are down, et cetera. So you need something that can be self-sustaining. And people were very interested in what I had to say about that. And So that's, I think, an obvious area. As I say, we haven't supported that so far, but I anticipate we will. The other big area that we've found is in remote service delivery. Things like trade shows, when people are running around and the Wi-Fi is weak, they can still, run their app and do so without having to have continuous connectivity. Truck deliveries. Anyone who's driven around, the back roads of Connecticut know that your Wi-Fi and cell connections can be pretty weak in places. So it's nice to be able to have an app that just runs on its own. And I mentioned that there's been one of the apps that uses the old DynaSync. They have been supporting hospital beds in homes across Connecticut for many years. And again, they find it essential for delivering oxygen and different things like that to be able to run independently without, and then be able to sync when they're back in a good, strong environment. We've also more recently been working with a client that they have machine interference. They run large weaving equipment, and some of it is quite old. It's really almost collectability kind of stuff. It's back in the days when Connecticut was known for its weaving and stuff, and its material manufacturing. And but some of those machines are quite noisy, and so it makes it hard to have a regular environment that's reliable. And then what we're finding is that because KyoSync is easier to use, there's all sorts of places, like you're on the train, you're on the plane, you want to be able to do your work, and you want to be able to not worry whether you're connected or not. And with the cost of implementation going down, we find that I know personally around the home, I'm starting to use syncing for all sorts of things that just are now possible because KyoSync's pretty easy to implement. One of the things I wanted to talk about, which is kind of fun, and I have a video I want to show you, because this was a video that we were very proud of, and we were featured by Claris and are on their website, which was work that we did for OceanX, which is part of a foundation that basically has a ship that goes around the world, a very sophisticated ship, and does sea exploration. And it's kind of cool. So I'm gonna do my best to show you the video and hopefully get you audio and do all that. So I'm just gonna escape here, go over to my video, and I'm gonna check my settings. You can tell I practiced this, and I got to turn on sound and let her rip. Thumbs up. You can hear okay?
Yes.
OceanX is a nonprofit organization that was set up to develop a community around the ocean, in a sense. It's an organization that runs an enormous research vessel to explore the world's oceans, and we combine scientific discovery and exploration with media. I first came familiar with FileMaker years ago in an academic environment. I found that there were lots of things we needed to do in terms of documenting, in terms of databasing, that simply weren't available anyway. And I'm a sort of mid-level programming guy. I'm not like a high end like a lot of my colleagues. And so I got introduced to it, and we started building very simple applications at work with it. But those things immediately grew into these very elaborate applications. And I'm still programming in it for the past 10 years. I've been still writing code for it. So I came to OceanX, and I looked around, and there were all these sort of high-end enterprise cloud-based things that people kept trying and then putting down. And I said, I know this may be sort of different, but in our world, we work with this package.
Vincent Peribon had developed a system in FileMaker. It had a lot of really great tools. When we saw it, we said, boy, this is a really interesting application he's building. And it was trying to work on the logistics for planning where the Athena would be traveling and how the season would plan out. What makes Claris FileMaker so powerful is that it's at the very high end of the low-code experience. So low-code means you can do things rapidly. A lot of things are figured out. You're not fussing with nasty details to get things applied. But at the same time, there's an extremely high level of power.
Claris FileMaker has been sort of our platform of choice because it gives you the ability to not only have a really solid database infrastructure, but then also the ability to customize that to our needs.
This application really manages all of the data for the ship, especially in the planning to execution phase of the agenda.
What we do is such a unique thing at OceanX. We combine operations on a vessel, we combine operations on shore. A problem that I really had not perceived that FileMaker would so beautifully solve was the fact that on the vessel, we have limited satellite communication. So all the cloud-based programs are simply not going to work on a ship. So what we did is we developed a package on land that contains the information and a package that's on the ship. And when we do get good satellite communication, the guys at KyoSync created this amazing syncing platform between the FileMaker implementation on the vessel and the FileMaker implementation on land. And it rapidly syncs these two things together, and everybody's essentially working on the same set of data. So FileMaker suddenly was a hero because they were able to do all kinds of fantastic things. As soon as we get in satellite range, the two sync.
And that gives us the ability to go and then focus on actually doing what we want to do and orchestrating these missions rather than, spending all of our time thinking about where's that bit of pocket of information, because there's just too much to hold in your head. So, you need somewhere for it all to live. And that's what FileMaker does for us.
So that was the kind of a fun thing that we did. And one of the things that was a breakthrough there, I'm going to turn off my computer audio so you can hear me properly. One of the things that was a breakthrough there was the fact that this was actually server to server. So on the ship, there actually is a complete server environment, and on the shore, there's a complete server environment. And so KyoSync, it was actually Justin that came up with this, and it worked great, and it's been working for years and over a satellite connection. So we're really learning that there's a bunch of ways that you can implement this KyoSync environment, and it works really, as I say, once it's set up, it works very reliably. So what I'd like to do is give you a quick demo and talk a little bit sort of under the hood, just to give you some sense of kind of what's going on. I'd love to get rid of this. There we go. Now I can do it. So this is an app that I showed at Engage, and it's just an albums app that basically has about a dozen albums in it. And at the end, by the way, I'll mention to you that we have a link where you can download this and play with it to sort of just have fun with it. And what's kind of fun is that this is the remote, the local version, but there's also an identical server version. And I know from my Ramble On days with you guys especially, which can be confusing. Am I looking at the server or am I looking at the remote? And so I put this magenta band on everywhere so you can sort of tell which is which, because it can be a little confusing. So this is a pretty simple database. It's kind of cool. It's just got some albums. But one of the reasons I selected LPs as a way to do it is, first of all, there's great album art, which is useful. There's a portal, which includes portal tracks, which are the tracks of the album. And then there's also the ability to add and manage artists. And there's also a join table so that, for instance, say Frank Zappa were on multiple different albums, you can associate the same artist with many different albums. And so this whole tool just is a nice platform to be able to demonstrate some of the issues that come up with syncing. Mainly, there's really several things. First of all is, of course, uploading and downloading information. The second one is managing portals within a broader layout, managing join tables, managing artist tables, for example, and also, very importantly, managing containers. So what I want to do to make this kind of easy, because I'm not about to type in all this stuff and have you guys waiting around, is I added a duplicate button, which allows me to completely duplicate this environment programmatically. So for example, when I duplicate it, there is a second piece of artwork in a second container. It's not, referencing the same information. So just to make life easy, I'm going to do that. I'm going to duplicate this now. And ask me if I want to, and I'm going, yes. And I'm just going to rename this John's copy. And so now I have a duplicate of the original, and there's no duplicate up here. But if I sync now, I go and I sync, and you see it goes through and it rolls through all the different tables that it needs to sync. And boom, I now have John's copy sitting on the server. And my experience here is really identical. Like if I come in here, I've got the, the different artists, etc. I've got the ability to manage the different tracks. I like to play congas, so I could sort of say, well, some of these, I don't really want to do that. I'm playing my congas, and hope you're feeling better. Yes, that's not bad, pretty good. So that's a nice song, but I'm going to get rid of it just because I'm in the mood. And I can start to delete information. I can also maybe, I can edit the information and say congas, just for fun. And so, this is sort of just manipulating. So this is actually, I'm doing this on the server. And now I can come back here. Now our person over on this side says, okay, I got to sync. And then all of a sudden, all of these changes come down. And now you find out that we got the sync taking place. And I think I didn't commit over here, but anyways, I'll commit. And I didn't get my congas. I don't know why I didn't, because I should have, but I didn't. And so I'll commit that, sync it. Nope, it's not coming down. It's being difficult. Okay, well, I don't know why, but it normally does that just fine. So anyways, the other thing I'm able to do, if you notice, it also deleted the tracks that I had gotten rid of. I'm going to try this again, see if I can get some better cooperation here. And I'll sync that, and let's just see what happens here. And there it's working fine. So I don't know why that didn't come down. It's probably something to do with committing or something in that range, but which shows you some of the complexity that can come up with syncing. But generally speaking, so what this is able to do is it's able to delete records, it's able to add records, it's able to add records and delete records in portals and in join table situations. So the process that goes on behind all this is really a lot of code that's just managing the many complexities that go on in the background. And so we normally wouldn't do this. We normally in an app, we would just have the sync now button that users would see. But for this demo, I included the sync admin. And this is what's going on in the background. And one of the things that we decided when we went to KyoSync 2 was that we would bring a lot of the controls up to the surface that had been kind of down, kind of locked into code in the past. So one of the things that I wanted to do is I'm going to show all active tables. There we go. So I wanted to take you through this just to show you kind of top line what goes on in setting this up. Especially, I'm interested in showing you the new transactional model and how it simplifies things. So if I come in here, let me take you first sort of how you would configure the thing. The first thing that happens is you come in here and you configure the server that you're going to be going to. And it allows you to specify a whole bunch of information about the server. It tells you about your unique ID. That's that unique identification on the thing. By the way, even numbers mean you're directly connected to the server, and odd numbers mean you are connected remotely. But this gives us a unique ID that's always true. And then there's a bunch of controls that are involved here, such as when I sync something to the server, do I want to perform script on server? Do I want to perform a script immediately? Or do I want to use this through a scheduled script? And the reason for those three choices are the perform script will literally sync right at the time you do your synchronization. The problem that can be with that is if you have a lot of processing to handle as a follow-up. So if you've sent a lot of data and it's going to basically hold up your connection for that period of time. What we prefer to use is perform script on server, which basically gives control back to the user immediately, but it is, and then it processes after you've left. And that's really by far the best. The requirement, however, for that is that the KyoSync is implemented as an add-on. And that's how I've done it here. So in this case, KyoSync has been embedded right in the application itself. And since we have add-on technology, KyoSync is fully available as an add-on. And when we distribute the file, it comes with the file that can be run externally, which works fine, or as an add-on, and the add-on tool is right within the file itself. So the third way we can do it is scheduled server script. And for example, that synchronizing that takes place on the ship is done on a scheduled server script that runs every 5 minutes. So the synchronizing is literally just processing. So the data gets uploaded to the server, and then on a scheduled basis, the server is processing the packets that it received. So I'm going to leave this as perform script on server, which is the way we have it. And if I come into the data model, it's really kind of interesting because in the data model, this is the albums application, and it exists. And then this is KyoSync, and the two are not connected in any way. KyoSync lives in its own little world. The only thing that it sees from the albums application are these 4 connections here. These ones here that are provided are samples, and they include sample code as well as just structure, just so you can, if you're looking for a template to work from, these are the templates that are provided. And so all you have to do to make this work is you add your tables that you want to sync. And the only requirement is that you set it up with both, I think this is easy to see, but you set it up with allow creation automatically and allow deletion automatically. And the reason for that is that these table occurrences are under control of the transaction processor, and that's what this is over here. All of this stuff over here is handling all the logistics in the background, but the real action literally all takes place here in connection with these tables, and so it's these controls here that allow you to both create as well as delete records.
John, I see a question from Paul.
Sure.
Yeah, John, this is interesting stuff. One of the things that I'm finding a lot that I have to do a lot is ETL functions, extraction, transformation, loading.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if this will do transformations, or would that be something that you would, if it's got to be uppercase in this system and lowercase in this system, would that be a script afterwards, or how would you handle something?
That's a great question. I think you could do all that sort of stuff. There is a data loading script, and it has tremendous granularity. Like, you've got control at a micro level. So I think it would be a customization of that script, but yes, you could do that sort of stuff dynamically. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but the way it works is it actually compares. Let me come back to your question, because I think if I try and explain it now, it's not going to make a lot of sense, but it'll make more sense in a few minutes.
Fine.
I did want to point out that there's a couple of things that are in each table, and I mentioned that we provide you with sample companies and contacts, and part of the reason is because there are samples of these required fields, and I'll just show you what they are. It's basically these, and we just, for standardization, modified timestamp, which is a standard. The sync ID is the thing that processes the unique identification, your unique identity. And it has auto enter calcs in it, which basically goes through a whole bunch of calculations dynamically and makes sure that any record that is either created or modified, it identifies who last did it. And where that can be really valuable, for example, is, let's just say you were the last person to upload a data and be the last person to edit it. Well, you certainly don't want to sync that back to yourself. So it sort of goes, it says, oh, that's you. You're not going to go grab your own stuff. So it knows. But if someone else came along for 2 seconds and edited it, it would change that ID and it would say, oh, now you've got to now download it because someone else had changed that information. The last updated UTC is literally just keeping track of what took place in time the last, and it's always looking for updates anywhere in any of the tables. The only other thing that gets implemented at all is the same concept for containers. We track them separately, so it doesn't attempt to resync containers that it had already synced. And so now this is the same logic, but instead of being driven by the last modified timestamp, it gets driven by a change in the container name. And again, this code is all provided. You just go and you just basically copy it and adapt it so that instead of saying whatever the container name is here, you'd be using the container name that's actually in the tables that you have in your system. The sync ID is the same thing. So those are the only changes. So getting your product or your tables registered with the system really is setting up those, the actual raw data connections, which I just showed you. Nothing more than that. That's the whole story. And then what we have, as you probably know if you've worked with the FileMaker API, is that it's based upon layouts, right? Everything's driven by layouts. So if I come in here to the artist layout, for example, or actually I'll go into albums, but here's the albums layout. And essentially all I have to do is drag onto the layout any of the fields that I want to make sure are being synced. So if a field is left off of here, it will not sync. So anything that you want to sync, you include here. It's pretty straightforward. And so it takes no time at all. Again, we provide you with contacts, which and also a companies, which I'm not actually showing in my menu system. I'll show you that as well. But as a result, it's very, very easy. You just duplicate the layout, change what it points to, and drag your fields on. You're done. It's very quick. And it didn't used to be that way. It used to be much more setting up, customized portals and doing all sorts of stuff. Don't have to do that anymore because of the transaction processor. So once those are done, the only thing we require is that the layouts that you create to drag on and tell it what's going to sync, you use fmrest underscore as a kind of a keyword. And the system then uses that. And one of the major improvements in KyoSync 2 is that it registers the table, the layout, excuse me, because remember it sees everything through layouts. It registers everything with the system, including does it have any containers on it. And then it also keeps track of here are all the fields that are available in that table. And the only settings you have to do that are literally required are to say, remember if there's that transaction controller, it has a field that uses to reference the targets, your target data tables. So you identify what that field is, and you can have as many of those fields as you want. I just chose one for now. And then what's the key field in your primary key of your table? One thing to be aware of, and I think everyone knows this, but for syncing, you cannot use serial numbers. You must have a unique serial, unique ID, so that it doesn't, create duplicates elsewhere in the, in the application. So once you've got those fmrest, you literally click this button and it automatically pulls it in and characterizes all this information automatically. So there's nothing to be done except create those 3 layouts and hit this, and then identify what your 2 sync keys are, and you are done. So it's pretty quick. And that's what you do for, a lot of stuff comes along for the ride. Each device gets a unique identifier and it keeps track of it. It also gets a unique working environment so that changes made in one working environment will not affect another working environment. It also tracks every session that is done, and it tracks every event that is done. It goes, there's a lot of tracking that's available. There's a thing called trace log, which you can turn on. And when you turn it on, it'll keep track of, let's see if I thought I had one there that I'd done. Let's just see if this one's got it. Nope. Anyways, I'll show it to you in a sec. And then again, there's a lot of details here, but there's also, you can, one of the things we want to really improve are the handoffs. So there's a complete settings of all the different handoffs of ways in which your users in your app, there's basically 3 different ways. You can have just a button like we've got here. You can have a button that takes you directly to here, which would be a second. You've also got 2 dashboards. One's a user dashboard that has tools on it, and the other one's an admin dashboard that has tools on it. So those things are all basically set up right here. You also, by the way, can download the app. You can also have it that the app is available for download, and people can literally, for example, go to that user interface and say, send me the app, and it'll do it. So people can log on to the server directly and say, download my local version of my local version, and it'll just download it automatically for them. I will say that we tend not to use that. It's kind of slow. We tend to find that using WeTransfer works a lot better and a lot quicker. And then up here, I can sync now, but I can also return to my application. And again, this is the environment that most people see. What I'm showing you on the back there is really the whole admin environment. And then if I come over here, I was going to show you a couple of cool things. In admin, if I turn on debug mode, and then if I do a sync, there's nothing to sync, but it'll do what I'm wanting to show anyways. Now I come over my sync events, go to my sync event. There's a complete trace log that you can turn on that shows everything that took place. And there's all sorts of areas in the code that will track, things like you're trying to track specific things there. And what we do is we comment them out. So we say, if we don't really need it, we comment it out. But all you have to do is uncomment it, and it'll add it to this trace log automatically. And there's also a larger window that you can open if you want to kind of follow your trace log. Normally, we do not leave that on because it's not necessary. But if you ever needed to be able to do something, to do some analysis. The other thing that is based in here, which is worth knowing, is resetting the system for distribution. What that does is it resets all the time syncs, which is really important when you go give it out, remembering to run this. And all it does is it says, do you want to reset? You follow through the instructions, which is like a couple steps, click OK, and it resets it. And that's really good because then you don't have situations where the timestamps are kind of not up to date, for example. A couple other things to show you. Transactions, I mentioned everything is transactional, and it is. Each JSON you send up, it's a complete packet of information. None of these are very big, but they are. So what we're sending up, so I mean, if you had 1,000 records, there'd be 1,000 records in here, and it keeps track of it, and you can mark it incomplete, and you can reprocess the transactions. Not true for containers. In that case, you actually have to resync. And there's a kind of a cool tool, because one of the things that we came across is that, for example, people would find that they had messed up their sync somehow. One of the problems we ran into with field workers was that they'd close FileMaker before the sync had happened. They'd set it to sync and then they'd close it, which FileMaker doesn't like. So we allowed them to move it back in time. So you can say, oh, okay, you lost your syncs from yesterday. If you triple click on this, it changes the date to yesterday's date. So you can actually go move back in time and resync things from yesterday. And all you have to do is come in here. If you hit the plus button, it'll only bring you up to your current time in place. So it allows you to, pretty quickly allow you to move around to an earlier date for syncing if that's required. The only time that's really necessary, as I say, is when you have when you're syncing containers, because containers stay on the FileMaker server for about 15 minutes, and then you basically have to resync them. So those are sort of the main features. The way in which deletions are taking place is when a deletion is happening on the system, it actually records the deletion into an instructions manual. And then this manual here gets run after every sync, and that actually provides the instructions to tell other members of the network community to delete the records. So it's kind of a complete little platform that does that. And as I say, users never see any of this. This is really all admin stuff. I mean, this is stuff that just operates in the background. What they really experience is just sync now, and they can take a look at, as I say, there's a bit of a kind of a user little dashboard that is there, which provides, you know, additional tools that you can choose to kind of how much you want to expose to users. Most people that we've dealt with just want a sync button. They don't want anything more fancy than that. So that's kind of the machine. I've gone through a lot of material. Does anyone have any questions or things that I glossed over that they'd like to ask about? Are we in good shape?
I'm curious if you have tools for helping clean up duplicates. You know, if so you put a new album in on your client and the same album in on your server.
Mm-hmm.
When they sync, now you got a duplicate record. So
if I go,
do you have
if I go here and I delete it and I go okay, and then I sync.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking for a way to help identify the duplicates. You know, if you get a million records in there, you're gonna start having.
Yeah, I guess you could. I mean, you could. I mean, it would be kind of a cool tool. You could program it to. I mean, I think told you about sync methods. What those do is they identify an ID that needs to be deleted. So you could actually code that if you wanted to say identify every. You know, you could write a software, you know, just that went through your file, found the thing, and put an entry into that sync methods with the ID of the record. It would take them out. You'd hit them go, and it's agnostic. Whatever's in that list to be deleted, it'll go. And if there's a matching ID in the target application, it will delete it.
You can also figure out a way, Paul, to create a unique ID of your record that includes information like the name or something like that, that if it were duplicated in one file, like if it would be the same if it was the same thing in two files, so that there wouldn't ever be a duplicate.
Yeah, if you removed it in one file, it would remove it in the other file as well, because it would set up a deletion. There is a script, by the way, that the deleting that we're talking about is a scripted delete, because when you delete something, it also creates a record of the deletion, which is necessary. Again, that code's all provided. It's just a matter of calling it. It's really very simple. It's just a short JSON script that says, this is what table I was on, and then everything else is automatic after that. You don't have to do much. Again, one of the things, and Derek was very helpful. He says, there's a lot of tools in here, but you got to bring them up to the surface. So that's a lot of what KyoSync 2 has that KyoSync 1 didn't have, which is bringing things up to the surface. One thing I did want to show just briefly is the when it arrives, and again, remember, I put this in as an add-on. And so when you do the add-on, you get basically this packet of scripts shows up. These largely are kind of admin sort of stuff. And one of the things that's quite powerful is the handoff controller, where you have lots of different options of how you hand off the control of KyoSync from your base application. But most of the stuff that's the actual syncing is all handled here. And one of the questions that we've had, probably more than any other question, is what happens if I don't want the whole database? I just want part of the database. So I just mocked this up this morning. So this is not active, but the entire scope of what the remote file chooses to get from the host is dictated by the find command, which is an API, a curl command. And the way that's done is there's a series of definitions. And right now, basically what we're looking for is stuff that has changed since and I send it the date, like I know what I want that's newer than, and that's how it allows me to adjust that date that I mentioned. Typically that's all automatic if you don't need to adjust it. And then it's also saying, don't send me, this is emit equal true, don't send me something that where I'm the last person to have identified as either creating or modifying the data. And those two queries go up, and that's what tells the server what to send the remote. Now, if you want to customize that, you could easily put in a third argument, which would say, in this condition, I want for this search field, which would be in your native application, I want this find value, and call it like Q2, right? Because right now we're using Q1 and Q2 as our first two queries. And then all you do here is you add Q2 to this query array here, and you've got your customized. So that's all that is required to, for example, put in a customized search, so that if you have 1 million records, but I only want the 5,000 that appeal to me, that's how you would do it. And we're thinking of working on a revision at some point that may help to automate that process. But right now you would just embed the code. So there's lots of opportunity to embed customized code within this. And the license that you get when you get KyoSync, basically, it's full access. Has to be, because you get right into the schema, to set up the work environment. So it's quite easy to go in and customize the code and use the tools in there as you might want.
John, when you were showing the admin in the back section, you had perform script and perform script on server. I'm
Yes.
wondering if there's that new perform script with callback. Is there any additional functionality we can eke by adding that setting, either to, I don't know, control?
I don't know. I don't think so, because what you're trying to do when you do perform script in a sync, remember we're in a sync environment. No, we're not in a regular running of a script. When you run it, you're trying to make it asynchronous is what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, I'm going to send you my packet. So I may be sending you 1,000 records to update in photographs and all sorts of stuff that can be fairly time consuming. And then I want you to process that, but I don't want to wait for you to process that. So I do perform script on server, which means my API connection gets released immediately, so I can quit. So for instance, if I'm wanting to send you a ton of stuff, I go up, I do it, it releases me, I quit, I'm done. Meanwhile, the server in the background is processing all that information. So I don't know if that callback feature, which is a very cool feature, would apply here. I don't think it would do anything for us, but you never know. Sometimes you think of new ways to do things, but I don't think it would apply here.
All right, thanks.
I had a few things follow up
See if
that I
Paul
wanted
has
to do.
his Paul
Oh,
Davis
sure,
has
sure.
his,
If there's a
hand
question,
raised.
yeah.
Quick one. You were talking about setting the clock back a day.
Yes.
What gets synced when you do that is the latest version of the record, correct? As opposed to what it might have been a day ago.
Correct.
So if you changed it again, you're still going to get the latest version. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah, you're just gonna get
what
anything
happens? Because when it's completed, right? When that function finishes, it will update the sync date to the last time you synced, right? So, and I don't mean it'll go back to yesterday's date. It'll go to today's date. It'll say, okay, why we developed that feature was if someone had messed up, like where this has been used a lot, right, is in the field. You got people using iPads. They're doing a bunch of work. So they do it and they say, well, I synced and and the person on the other side said, well, I don't see your stuff. And so they go, well, I synced 300 photos yesterday. And so this is just a great tool to be able to say, okay, well, let's pretend it's yesterday, and then boom, up come the 300 photos. And it works quite well. But that was the use case that was being addressed there.
Okay, thanks.
I just wanted to point out something here quickly. We have a QR code that we did. This is a little booklet we gave out at Engage, which was kind of fun. I have to say, Melissa chose these books and they're great. I love them. Anyways, it has a QR code on, and that takes you to an information page, which is sort of an information follow-up, including the ability to get a hold of that sample demo that I gave you. So if you wanted to get a hold of that and play with it, it can be downloaded there. Here's this is the QR code if you want to take a shot of it, and there's the address. Or if this isn't a big crowd, if you're having trouble getting to it, give us a call. But this gives you the ability to have follow-up, and also we'll be doing things like announcing future webinars. One of the things that I want to do is continue to try and make this whole thing more understandable. And so we hope to be, doing some helpful videos and other things that will be kind of help tools for implementing. And Justin, that's all I got for you.
All right. Thank you, John. I also put the link in the chat if you didn't get the QR code. All right. Well, thank you very much, John. I think that was really informative. I hope everybody else got something out of that. Moving on to the next topic that we wanted to discuss, which was the Engage recap. Kind of make this an open forum for anybody who attended. How did you feel like it was? How did it compare to previous Engages that you've been to? And curious to see if there are any videos that anybody's watched since Engage that they feel were especially interesting or important that are worth either kind of summarizing to the team or just letting us know, hey, this one's really worth watching. So I'll kind of open the floor.
I wasn't there, but I did watch some of the videos, and there were a ton of them. It's taken a while to get through them. And in fact, that is a bit of an issue. It's just going to the page that has all of the videos. That's what you see. They're not organized in a particular way, and I found that frustrating.
That's not correct. They're grouped by days, and the speaker is identified with each one of them. Are you sure you're going to the right page?
Well, it's just a page that has a list of all of the speakers, apparently in the order that the talks were given. And you click on it and you get the video.
Well, they're subcategorized into folders: Claris presentations, keynote, not Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday are presentations. And each of them, the Wednesday and Thursday presentations, there's a little button at the bottom of the page to go to the rest. Yeah, that's it.
So maybe we could share this link. That's
yeah, and so these are all the items. I think, Paul, I'm assuming this is what you're seeing as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think and I don't know what their options are with Box, but it is, unless you know either who the speaker is or the title is really just descriptive enough for you to know what it was about. I kind of agree with you that sometimes you don't fully know what you're getting yourself into when you click on one to start watching it.
Or if you wanted to find a particular subject area, like OpenAI integrations or something, you've got to look at pretty much everything to find them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It may be worthwhile to look at the Claris Engage agenda and almost find the presentation that seemed interesting from the agenda. And then
that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Justin, if you can go back up one level to now take the Thursday sessions And one I want to recommend that everybody take a look at is Wim de Koort's. Now, that may be on this page or it may be on the second page.
This one right here.
That one.
Are you
Yes,
confident in your app
yes,
security?
that is it. That was a probably one of the 2 or 3 best presentations I've ever seen in 25 years of going to these conferences, and it clearly points out that many in the community, unfortunately, including experienced developers, are not aware of the nuances of some of the security structure. So I would highly recommend that session. I'd also recommend Chris Hippolyte's session and on
the one
AI.
on the API.
Yeah,
On
that's
AI.
excellent.
That was the previous day.
As well as if you go up to the Claris sessions, no, you're there, just back up one right there. FileMaker State of the Union with Clay Makel and Lucy Chan. Some very important information in that program, and you can sort of ignore that old guy at the end that was talking about passwordless. But there are many more. I'm still working through them as well. But Angie has done a first-class job, in my judgment, getting these assembled and getting them up there.
Yeah, we've been going through them as individuals and then making recommendations to the rest of the team as to what might be good ones to watch. We attended the Ernest Coe's on AI, and Derek and I did, and we thought it was absolutely excellent. Another one would highly recommend it.
Ernest and Joris Arts and Chris Hippolyte will be doing a Claris sponsored webinar. Now I'm going to tell you the wrong date. So
it's on April the 10th.
April the 10th, correct.
Yeah. And I can actually share the link to that if I can find it. Now these videos are currently only available to those who attended Engage or those who purchased the video. I think there's like a 30-day video like pre-launch. They should come out to the general public probably in a couple of weeks, probably sometime in April. I would imagine they'll start putting those in YouTube. So I would look out for them there if you haven't received them through from Claris, either through one of the purchases you made. Cool. Thanks, Stephen. As far as attending Engage, how did you feel like it was compared to previous years? I know this year's Engage was a smaller group of people. I think instead of the normal 1,000 plus attendees that they have, it was closer to what, like 300 attendees.
Yeah,
Stephen, as somebody who's been to a lot of them, how do you feel like that went?
Well, first, I think we had a little over 500 registrants there. In terms of the broader question about how it compared, I'm sorry to say, significantly deficient. People spread out all up and down through that domain center drive. The buses actually did work, but I don't know how many people were using them. There were a couple of occasions where on the bus to and from the Weston, that Steve Lane from Salant and I were the only passengers on the bus. So we had fun with that. The Apple facility had a lot of issues with infrastructure, including the audio-visual, the wired internet. During the keynote, the sound went down in the overflow room. And Angie Wong jumped up on the stage, grabbed the local microphone, and started narrating what was on the screen. Another case of her saving the day. We know the formula that works. It's worked well for 24 previous ones, and my judgment and my opinion is that I hope they return to it. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't have any inside knowledge about that. But to me, through the years, the purpose of the conference is not that it is for us or by us. It is of us. And it was difficult to make those type of connections in the facilities where we were.
Yeah, it was more like going to a business seminar than a conference, really.
Correct. And, you know, people were getting lost in that building. And the people from Apple frequently did not know where the rooms in the building were. There was construction going on outside, which was making quite a bit of ruckus for some people. That said, there were some good programs that were presented, and I was very happy to see people that, you know, I've known for years, Rick Kalman, Rosemary Teege, Janine Camel, Hunter Brock, Clay Makel, Lucy Chen, many people like that. But, you know, take a look at some of those videos and, you know, there was some good information presented there. And we'll see what happens.
I have to say, I really enjoyed the sessions I went to. Like I found, I agree that the common areas were a bit of a challenge, but I felt that the number of the sessions I went to were really excellent, and as was the presentation environment. So I kind of liked some elements of it, but I think, you know, like a lot of people were concerned that there was no closing ceremony, you know, that type of thing. But when I spoke to the FileMaker, the Claris people, they were saying they were very aware of those issues. I think part of the challenge for them was finding environments that are, you know, that can handle the number of people and stuff like that. So was obviously a much smaller environment, but I kind of I liked the good parts of it. I really liked, but it was missing some stuff.
Yeah, I think Derek and I saw that firsthand. The opening keynote session, we were in the holdover room where there were probably about 150 out of the 500 people in there because they couldn't fit everybody in the main room. And I would say for a third of the presentation, we didn't hear a thing that they said because of technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So there's definitely situations like that were noticeable.
Well, I was in the other room, the main room towards the back. Wim DeCord and I think Paul Costanza were sitting right in that general area, and we were sort of in to the side of the, for lack of a better word, the AV control station. And we didn't know that the sound had gone down in the other room, but we knew that something was going on because Eric Fraser and company were in one mad scramble.
Trying to figure things out.
They were working away.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah, and you know, on the training day, despite two of the trainers' courses, the people having been over there on Monday all day long, checking the stuff, the wired internet and all that stuff, when they got there on Tuesday, it was down, it wasn't working, and nobody seemed to know much or care much about getting it fixed, which sort of, when you're talking about spinning up servers and they're all in the cloud, it's very helpful to have wired internet. So, but there were good things and there were things that were not as we would like to have maybe seen them. And so I don't know, hopefully we'll hear soon what the thinking is about going forward. There were some other good sessions too. I didn't get to go to many sessions. I never do get to go to many of them. But talking about syncing, Teresa Macqua from Profile Developers in Pittsburgh did a reprise of her FM Desk program, and it was about syncing iPads when people get back to the office. A little bit different type of syncing job than you described, but she did a good job, as did Todd Weller, also from Pittsburgh, the can't remember the name of that company, Cross IT, and he was talking about some of the new features. So there's good stuff there.
Yeah, it's cool. We had a funny thing happen after I presented in the what was the name of the room? I'm forgetting but it was the amphitheater with all the leather seats and everything. So we're in the green room afterwards. We're all going, yeah, it went pretty good. Yeah. And the next session started, and the only exit from the room was across the stage. So we were sitting there in the green room going, we're gonna be here a while. And eventually they let us out through the control room. But we were wondering how long we were going to be stranded for. But it was kind of funny.
Philosopher's Rock, I think that was the name of it.
Yeah.
Strange room names in that building.
Hard to remember, but I've never presented before where there was like a whole camera crew and a technical. It was kind of fun actually, but kind of neat.
Any other thoughts on Engage or videos that anybody else has watched that they feel are worthwhile to recommend to the group?
I thought you mentioned the one from Mark Richmond.
Yeah, so there was one. It's not, I would say, FileMaker specific, but more kind of business consulting related, which is something we all end up doing in our roles. But Mark Richmond from Skeleton Key had a really solid presentation on business scorecarding and building KPIs and metrics and how to go about doing it in an effective way that I found really useful. I took a lot out of that video. And then there was another one that I watched that was more of a sales presentation, but also very interesting, by Bill Bennett, Engineers Who Sell: A Framework for Advancing Your Ideas, what I really liked about that was a lot of us, engineering type people we don't think about things from a salesman's perspective, and he helped kind of frame sales from an engineer's perspective, using checklists, kind of having a step-by-step process, almost making a sale like your server spin up steps. It was almost like that, which I found really interesting. So two non-FileMaker related ones that I found to be quite interesting.
Skeleton Key is known for being a highly methodical organization, and between his presentation and Greg Lane, you always get pretty good information.
Definitely.
Yep. All right. Any other recommendations of videos to watch, or shall we move on? All right. So for next month, we'd like to get back to doing the CFDGs monthly. We're looking for ideas for the next CFDG. If there are any topics maybe learned through the Engage that we feel are worth exploring more, we could reach out to maybe one of the presenters from Engage if there was a specific presentation that we feel will be worthwhile to have them kind of come and give to us firsthand. I'd love to get some feedback. If not, then we'll go back to the drawing board and try to figure out what we think are interesting things to discuss next month.
We may want to revisit the video discussion again too, because then by then more people will have had a chance to watch more of the videos too.
I
That's
agree
true.
with that completely. I want to watch a
Yep.
bunch more videos.
So
Yeah, there were some pretty
well,
hot topics. There really were. I mean, some of the AI stuff was really fascinating.
cool. So what we could do is come into the next CFDG, each having watched a number of videos. I would imagine by the time that it comes out, our next CFDG is, they will have come out to the general community. And then we can, talk through some of the specific videos. I think the ones that Stephen recommended, I know are going to be on the top of my list to watch, and we can come in and kind of almost have a book club meeting about the different videos and go from there.
There we go. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Sound like a plan?
Yes.
That sounds good.
Awesome. All right. So how do we feel about doing it around the same time next month? Maybe let's see. April 24th. Any opposition to that date?
That's fine
Sounds
by
good to
me.
All right, great. All right, so we'll meet again April 24th, and we'll talk more about Engage and all the videos.
Great.
Very good.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, John, for the presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And if anybody has any further questions or anything about KyoSync, feel free to reach out to either John or myself or
follow that
anybody on the
link. Yeah,
KyoSync team.
there's good
we'll be
connections
happy
there.
we'll be happy to chat more about it with you. All
All
righty.
right. Take care, guys.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Good night.